We're starting a new devotional series as we enter Lent. We're still going to be in the Gospel of Luke, but we're going to focus on Jesus' journey to the cross. Luke is the longest book in the New Testament. It has 24 chapters, and some of those chapters have 50, 60 verses in them. Essentially, what Luke is an account of Jesus' birth, his life, his work, his teachings. But fairly early in the work, chapter 9, Luke records this. Luke 9, verse 51. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. He's resolved to go to the cross, to die. Jesus is not like other founders of world religions. He's not like Muhammad, who wrote and ruled and conquered. He's not like Buddha, who's fundamentally passed on philosophy and wisdom. The King of Glory came to die, and to die on a cross. That through that great fracture in the fabric of the current order, that he might set all things straight. And Luke traces Jesus' work towards that end, towards the cross. I'm going to be reading in Luke chapter 19, beginning in verse 41, but just prior to that, in Luke 19, 28 and following, we see the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem, or at least into the metro area of Jerusalem. And that begins the Passion Week, the week leading up to Jesus' crucifixion. Now, in this passage, Jesus can see the city walls and the gates. He's approaching the city. He can really get a good view of it. And this is it, the beginning of the end and the start of something new. Jesus, as I've said, is on the journey to the cross. And perhaps there's a sense of excitement that his mission is coming close to being completed. But there had to be the dread of what he knew he must suffer in the cross and the heartbreak for the judgment that the city was about to call down on itself. Let's read Luke chapter 19, beginning in verse 41. And when he, that's Jesus, drew near and saw the city, he wept over it, saying, would that you, even you, had known on this day the things that make for peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. For the days will come upon you when your enemies will set up a barricade around you and surround you and hem you in on every side and tear you down to the ground, you and your children within you. And they will not leave one stone upon another in you, because you did not know the time of your visitation. And here Jesus is prophesying, talking about the coming judgment on the city of Jerusalem that will eventually be meted out in 70 AD. But he doesn't make this pronouncement in anger or satisfaction. What does he do? He weeps. Verse 41, and when he drew near and saw the city, he wept over it. Jesus' heartbreak over the city of God, over his people, brought tears to his eyes. Despite all his experiences, the rejection of many people, the conflicts, God's perspective of his people's faithlessness, knowing that he's going to suffer, despite all that, he had compassion. He longed for the people to repent. He wanted them to sue for peace, and he knew that many, maybe even most, wouldn't. Balancing justice and mercy is not an easy thing, at least not for me, not for most of us. We tend to fall on one side or another. We twist grace into becoming an enabler of injustice and abuse, or we mete out justice with a brutality and maybe even a glee that when we see it is kind of frightening. But Jesus had a clear-eyed picture of the world, and he still weeps for it. Now, I noticed an interesting thing, a curious thing about my own emotional reactions and how my body responds to that. As I begin to feel sadness or grief, there's a brief moment when my eyes begin to water, but before I really give in to tears, And it's like I can see more clearly. Things seem sharper. They're more focused. There's a scientific and biological explanation of this. Our eyes are rarely lubricated as well or as uniformly as they should be. So in this moment before our eyes become blurred with tears, they are working at their optimal because of tears. We're creatures of mind, will, and the heart, but those things are rarely working well together. Our head tends to dominate our heart, and we become cold and distant, or our will to act, it gives us power to do things, but it also can make us brutal. Our hearts are a driving force, but those unregulated passions can destroy us and destroy the people around us. But before our passions override our better judgment, when our hearts are engaged, our thinking unclouded, our will ready to act, at this triple point, we can have clarity. But that clarity only comes with tears. And it's hard. It's hard to remain open to that, to remain tender-hearted. The more life we see, the more pain we experience, the less tolerant we become of it, the more we shut ourselves off from it. Perhaps the more angry we become with life. But we have to find a way to remain open, to remain compassionate. And we do that by seeing the world through God's eyes, what was intended and what it can be through mercy. But we have to remember that clarity only comes with tears. Keep your heart open. May God bless you all. Have a great week.